Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast for our final segment of the day, where we are going to be diving into the key takeaways from the series between the Boston Red Sox and Texas Rangers. And this was a series for the Red Sox coming off of, a pretty emotionally charged couple of days where it seemed like this was going to be the perfect time for the Red Sox to be able to bounce back, considering they were swept by the Astros over the weekend. Then on that weekend series, there's the whole Jarren Duran debacle where he says a homophobic slur to a member of the crowd. He ends up getting suspended for a couple games, and vibes were very low coming into this series against the Rangers, but they seem to be swinging in the other direction, where the Red Sox were able to walk it off in Game 1 thanks to Rob Refsnyder in extra innings. And then in Game 2, having, what was a pretty high leverage situation coming into the 8th inning. We actually saw Kenley Jansen come in for that last out of the 8th inning. And by the time he came back out, the Red Sox had the bottom of the lineup especially came through to sort of bury the Rangers in that matchup on Tuesday, to the point where things are starting to roll. And then just an absolute choke job on Wednesday by the Red Sox, where they had a 3-run lead in the top of the 9th inning with 2 outs, and Wyatt Langford takes Josh Winkowski deep to tie the game. And then immediately in the 10th inning, Zach Kelly allows a 2-run homer that ends up being the dagger, and the Red Sox lose this game. It was a bit of a disaster, as especially the bullpen with this Red Sox team has just been atrocious as of late, and we'll sort of get into the specifics there. But even before diving into that whole thing, you look further into this collapse by the Sox in the 9th inning, and the game should have been over if the Red Sox could just turn double plays. But obviously this defense has been extremely challenged in the past few years. They had an opportunity with 1 out to turn 2, and instead a throw that's off the mark from Ceddanne Rafaela going to Romy at first base. Interesting to note as well that Nick Sogard, who was playing second, he had just gotten hurt the play prior, so that's what has to bring Rafaela in for shortstop, where Rafaela is going to be an all-league defender at some point in his career. He's already shown so much potential, but especially at shortstop, which isn't his natural position, he's definitely shown a tendency to be a little bit less consistency at shortstop. And I also think that Romy Gonzalez, he might have unnecessarily leapt off of the bag in that point as well. Just can't really do that. It was just messy. And then obviously Winkowski is the one who lets up the bomb. So as much as, yeah, sure, that could have been an extra out as well. This is just a Red Sox bullpen that it feels like, outside of Kenley Jansen, they are just so desperate for arms that can come in and give them, one quality inning. And that has felt like a lot to ask lately, even though it really shouldn't be all that much. And it hurts more when you look even further into the game and the opportunities the Red Sox let slip away, notably Jarren Duran in his first game back from suspension. He had a pretty rough game overall, but specifically him getting caught stoling in the 8th inning before the Sox put together a rally and ended up scoring 3 runs. That should have been 4. That Wyatt Langford at bat shouldn't have been the game tying run. And just the mental mistakes are definitely hurting the Red Sox lately. This is a young team, obviously, and that's to be expected to some degree, but it's also the Boston Red Sox. So you do feel like there should be, a level of maturity, and they haven't been able to necessarily live up to that as of late. So this Game 3 loss, I'm going to try not to spend the entire segment talking about it, because ultimately the Red Sox win this series. So it's just such a sour taste in your mouth as to how things could have looked coming out of this series. And to be fair, it's against the Rangers, who are, not mathematically out of the playoff race, but are probably, in all intents and purposes, out of the playoff race. And you're sort of scratching and clawing to end up beating them. So those were some tough wins in games 1 and 2, and it felt like you're able to get through that, and you can start to really build some momentum back. Again, things were low after that sweep from the Astros series and all the extracurricular stuff that was going on off the field with Duran's suspension. But I think that, having that game end the way that it did, and having the worst loss of the season probably for the Red Sox, and headed into now a 4-game series against the Orioles, it's such a whiplash almost of emotions, where it was as much of a win as it possibly could have been headed into the 9th inning, and the Red Sox found a way to lose that, and now they have a team that they haven't really been able to beat in 3 years. That's who you're matching up against in sort of a must-have series. It's just a brutal turn of events. So, ultimately, again, Red Sox take the series, and what I do want to give them credit for is their offense continues to really produce. And that's something that, especially leading into the deadline, was a big topic of conversation, especially the idea that, okay, well, if they just face a left-handed starter, they're kind of screwed, because all of their significant hitters are lefty for the most part, and it just leads to a very clear matchup issue. But even despite that, the Red Sox, we went over the stats headed into this series, not sure where they're standing, or it was headed into the weekend specifically, but number 1 pretty much since the All-Star break, number 1 in batting average, OPS, runs scored, and everything. Again, obviously the numbers are probably off now, but even still in this series, they give you 5 runs, 9 runs, and 7 runs. So they are playing very well right now. So if there is a positive, it's talking about the continued production from Masataka Yoshida, for somebody who was looking like he could maybe be one of the worst contracts in baseball earlier this year, when he was struggling with his injuries and he wasn't hitting it all. He's no longer in the outfield because he's not good defensively. So that was definitely a concern at one point. He's been unbelievable as of late. But, and like I mentioned, you got a little bit of production as well from some of the role players in this series. Romy Gonzalez starting to swing the bat a little bit better. Nick Sogard has been sort of a random addition to this lineup and giving you basically as good of second base play as the Red Sox have gotten since Dustin Pedroia retired, because it's more of a statement on how bad that second base position has been for them as of late. But I think that's a very fair statement. And even the starting pitching in this series was able to give you some really nice outings. Just going down the line here with each of the starts, you look at that game 1, and ultimately in that game you have Brian Bayo on the mound. Broke a streak of, I think it was 4 or 5 straight starts where he had allowed a home run. And he ultimately in this game gave you 6 innings pitched, 4 hits, 3 walks, not great, but just 1 earned run, struck out 5, and again kept the ball in the ballpark. So pretty solid stuff there from him. Game 2, definitely a little bit annoying considering how things played out with Cutter Crawford, because he was absolutely dealing through those first 5 innings, and ultimately, things fall apart in the 6th. You can only get 1 out. They end up bringing in Cam Boozer, who had, him and Chafin is the player for the Texans as well. Andrew Chafin, I think his name is. Both 2 of the worst, pitching appearances I think that I've ever really seen from either one of them. But Boozer was horrendous in this game, ends up walking a couple guys to score some runs, and Cutter ultimately 4 earned runs, 3 hits, 1 walk. It felt like it was a start that had so much promise, but Fortunately, Cutter, with the fatigue that he's dealing with, he only makes it 67 pitches in this game. So would have liked more there. And then Houck, another one where, you know what, it definitely didn't feel great for a lot of that game. Traffic in, the first, second, and third, and then some in the seventh as well. But, I definitely didn't think he was going to reach the seventh based off of how things were starting. Just unable to find the strike zone early on there, but worked himself back into the groove. Yeah, you get a good number of base runners, 6 hits, 2 walks, but only 2 earned runs. Ultimately, a pretty good performance there as well. But the bullpen has just been a disaster for them. And it's a part of their game where I thought that coming out of the trade deadline, that they were going to be, I think I said on this show, and if I did, then, I'm outing myself, and it was a horrendous take, but I thought they could have been one of the better bullpens in the MLB, considering the fact that Kenley Jansen, I think even though he is a heart attack in the waiting in terms of he always a base runner with Kenley, but first off, that 4-out save that he had on Tuesday, he absolutely crushed it there. I think it was 13 pitches, so he was unbelievable there. And then, to be fair, we still haven't gotten to see much of Justin Slayton and Chris Martin yet. That's really the big X factor that I was leaning on as well. Chris Martin, he pitched last night. They gave him 1 out. Why not use him into the 9th inning? He is your second most reliable bullpen arm, I think, at this point. And I do like Lucas Sims. Obviously, he had a little bit of a meltdown in the Astros series, but that's the thing, is you're just talking about so few players that you can really trust, and you can't just lean on Kenley Jansen every single night that you need a win. And, I was texting with a friend of mine last night during the game. Well, he was saying, where's Kenley when it comes to the 10th inning? It's like, he just pitched 4 outs the night before. I understand maybe a little bit of soft. Kenley's not a young guy. He's in his late 30s, and you should have somebody that you can put in the 9th inning in a 3-run game and be able to not blow that game. But unfortunately, that's not really the case for the Red Sox right now. And ultimately, they're sitting here still very much alive in competition for that last wild card spot. Going to be a, big stretch of games coming up now. They're going to be going on to face the Orioles, and then they have the Astros and the Diamondbacks in consecutive series. So going to be a tough stretch there, but after that, the workload softens up a little bit. You get the Blue Jays, the Tigers, and the White Sox are down the road there as well. So, you're going to have to survive this next, I think it's a 10-game stretch, 4 games versus Baltimore, and then 3 versus Arizona, and the 3 versus Houston. But they're still very much alive in terms of the wild card hopes. But if things are going to change again, Slayton, Chris Martin, they got to come back and they got to be actual reliable players for them, because at this point, again, the bullpen, Luis Garcia has been horrendous since the Red Sox traded for him. I think his ERA is above 12 since he's been with the Red Sox. He's given them nothing to build off of, and the bullpen as a whole just is pretty messed up. They also got the news earlier this week as well that James Paxton, sort of leading on to earlier the conversation of the Red Sox felt so dead after that weekend Astros series, that James Paxton has a torn calf. So good chance he doesn't, a partially torn calf. So good chance that he doesn't return for them this season, and their arms are going to be worked. And for a group that is, I'd say, especially the starting group, pretty inexperienced in terms of going this deep into the season, Sox are going to have their trials ahead of them. But still in play. So we will definitely see. But that is all the time we have for today. Thank you very much for tuning into the GSMC Sports Podcast. Thank you to the GSMC Sports Network for allowing us to host this show. Remember to like, follow, subscribe wherever you keep up with us. Be sure to check us out on social media as well for more exclusive short content. And we will see you tomorrow, same time as always at 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet. Damn, ain't that great.